Retro review time again, and I've got a real classic for you today. These irons, the Callaway Big Bertha irons from 1994, were played by two of my favourite players, Colin Montgomery and Annika Sorenstam. Those guys knew a bit about iron play, so I'm really looking forward to seeing what they can do. Now, we've teamed up with Golf Clubs for Cash, one of the leading retailers of pre-loved equipment, so please take a look in the description below, go and check those guys out. They've provided us with some absolute gems. These aren't even £110 for 3 to sand wedge. Really keen to see what they can do. Let's get to the practice ground and see what they've got. As I said there, I picked these up for £106.99, and that's for the whole set. That's not per club, people, that's for the whole set. It's unbelievable value. I've got 3 iron to sand wedge here. And before I start hitting them away, I want to talk a little bit about the tech story. Now, everything about these irons was geared towards forgiveness, from the sheer size of the head to this incredibly thick top line to the masses of offset. It's all geared towards playability. And there is one other thing that's really interesting. This happened back in the day quite a lot, and you don't see it anymore. It's this bore through technology. Now, you might not have heard of that before. So basically it's where the shaft comes into the head and where it rests. Quite often in modern day equipment, the shaft might come to about there and stop, and then there'll be some dead weight here. With bore through, the shaft goes right down to the bottom, needs to be trimmed at an angle and pinned. Now, originally, that was because glue wasn't very good, so they wanted as much shaft in the hosel as possible, as much surface area for that glue to adhere to as possible. But as glue got better, they realized there was another potential saving. So the less dead weight of head that was in this hosel, they could make shorter hosels and redistribute that weight around the club face, creating bigger surface areas and more forgiveness. And as I said, that's entirely what this club is all about. So for comparison, I brought with me the Callaway Paradigm AI smoke iron from this year. I just want to see how they perform up against each other. These irons are 30 years apart, and it should be noted that the lofts are very different. So we've got 33 degrees of loft on this 7 iron, and we've got 28 degrees of loft on the new Paradigm AI Smoke 7 iron. And that in itself is a bit of a talking point. As I said, the story with the Big Bertha iron back in the day was all about forgiveness, and with that came trying to help you get the ball airborne easily, hence probably some more traditional lofts. Fast forward 30 years to 2024, and Callaway is still trying to do the same thing, maximum forgiveness, but golf courses have gotten longer, it's become more of a power game. So they're trying to add some distance and give you a bit more of a ball speed boost by cheating the lofts a little bit, I will say. So we're down at 28 degrees, 5 degrees stronger, but they're still trying to add launch in other ways by moving CG lower and adjusting other things to really still help us get the ball airborne. So it's going to be a really interesting comparison to see how these go side by side 30 years apart. I'm going to hit some 4 irons, I'm going to hit some 7 irons, I'm going to hit some pitching wedges. Let's see what the numbers say. That's the Big Bertha's done, and I've just picked up the 2 7 irons here, and the difference is just unbelievable. In terms of look profile down behind the ball, they're like completely different golf clubs. The Big Bertha 7 iron, I reckon the top line is 4 times thicker than on the Paradigm AI Smoke. The face is deeper, there just looks to be a whole lot more mass behind the ball, and I'm gonna be honest, I think out of the 2, if I was in the game improvement market, I'm getting a lot more confidence from that Big Bertha. It's really interesting. Sorry to interrupt, I hope you're enjoying the video. If you are, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, hit that like button and comment down below. Let me know about the retro equipment you play and that you've loved over the years. Well, that's really interesting. I've hit a number of shots there with the 4, the 7 and the wedge of both. There's some interesting numbers that I'll talk to you about in a second, but just from a sheer feel point of view, what I was experiencing as I was hitting those shots, I have to say I really enjoyed hitting those old Big Bertha irons. It felt a softer feel off the face and arguably a bit springier. They come out of completely different flight windows, which I'll talk to you about in a moment. But yeah, from a raw feel point of view, I felt the AI Smokes, and I've reviewed these and I really like these as game improvement irons, but it's just more a bit more robust, harsher feel, I would argue, at impact than the Big Bertha irons. And that's an interesting story in itself. Over the years of club manufacturing, things change with things like feedback from tour players, feedback from consumers, ball changes, the balls change over the years. So the materials companies are using to create the acoustics and the feels have dramatically changed over the years. So if you're buying from generation to generation, there's some real characteristics, and as a club tester myself, you can almost pick out the generation of the club from the acoustic on the range. It's a really interesting thing that as technologies change, that has developed along with it. But I really want to know about the performance of these because, like I said, those were completely different flight windows. So I want to delve into the data a little bit. Right, from a data point of view, really interesting. I'm going to pop it up on the screen there for you to take a look at. And throughout the 3 clubs, the 4, the 7 and the wedge, what I was seeing and would expect to see is higher ball speed from the Paradigm AI Smoke. We're talking 5 degrees of differential loft there between the 7 iron, so you would expect to see that. Once again, something I did expect to see was a higher launch from the Big Bertha irons because of that loft once again. So initial launch angle was much higher on the Big Berthas. But what surprised me is the spin was actually not dissimilar. I was getting a touch more off the Big Berthas again, which you would expect. I'm basing this all on loft. But it wasn't what I would imagine in terms of an increase for that level of degrees of loft. So what I was getting out of those Big Berthas, they were pretty much punching above their weight in terms of their distance output, because I was getting kind of a high launch, lowish spin style flight, which is what we look for in driver to maximize distance. And I was actually getting that out of those irons, so they were punching above their weight, which is really interesting. And quite honestly, for the right type of player who needs to get that ball airborne quickly, wants the assistance getting the ball airborne, that could be really interesting to explore. So in summary there, I really enjoyed testing those. That was a real trip down memory lane for me. I can still remember following Colin Montgomery around the Forest of Arden in the British Masters, I think it was, and watching him stripe these old Big Berthas, the long irons down the fairways, the approaches into the greens. And I remember Annika Sorenstam setting all sorts of records with them around US Opens and greens in regulation records. So there's some real heritage in these irons. And I have to say, in performance, I was really impressed. They felt great, and from a data point of view, the additional launch I was getting over some modern day stuff with lower lofts, but whilst it was still punching above its weight from a distance point of view, I thought it was a really interesting combination. And the elephant in the room, we've got to talk about it, is for a full set 3 to sand wedge here is less than these are per club. So for the price conscious and for the right flight characteristics, there's some real potential value to be had there. One thing I would say, and the only drawback on the Big Bertha irons, and I'm looking at it right here, the sand wedge, if you're looking for something with ultimate touch and feel and versatility, well, this might not be it. You might want to invest in a specialist wedge to go along with this set. You'd be better off frying an egg on this, I think. It's pretty big and it's pretty cumbersome, but the rest of the set I've got no problem with at all. So really worth a look, £106.99. Get yourself over to golf clubs for cash and look for some bargains like that. There is value to be had.